Merry Christmas and welcome to the ranking show here on ProBox TV. Download the ProBox TV app, the gift that keeps on giving, not just the programming here, but the best fights on ProBox available on the app. We're talking about one of the gifts that keeps on giving in the world of combat sports. That's right, the trilogies, the best ones of all time. Why? It settles who is number one. You can get lucky in one fight, get lucky 2 out of 3. That is difficult. To help me with the list, that's right, the champs in studio, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi, to help us out with the list. We got to start off with the classic. When you think about trilogies in boxing, this is really the gold standard. It is Frazier versus Ali. Of course, we know about them, two of the greatest. And what I love about this, gentlemen, we start with you, Paulie, it decided the best of that era. This is a theme we're going to return to a lot with these trilogies. Sometimes they fought 4 times. It decided who was best of the era. If Frazier wins the third fight, the famous Thrill in Manila, maybe we talk about him as the greatest of all time. What you thought about this trilogy?
Yeah, you know, that's the thing about these rivalries and why they're so good, because each fight, when you have a classic trilogy, each fight is so close. And it just, you know, it has that competitive nature as well. It's not just that it's close, but it's also exciting. Each fight gets exciting. Each fight has that melodrama and drama. Man, you think about the Thrill in Manila. You know what, Jimmy? I'm going to disagree with you because Frazier got hammered against Foreman, and he would have never had a win over Foreman. Ali, right. I think it more so cements Ali as the greatest of his generation. And in any of those conversations, there's always a little bit of politics. You know, Leonard, best of his era, did he really beat Hagler? Who knows, right? I mean, Ali, the same thing. I mean, did he really beat Norton 2 out of 3? We don't know, right? So, but nonetheless, when it comes down to this fight, by the time you get to the Thriller in Manila,
Young, another
yes, exactly, exactly. By the time you get to the Thriller in Manila, though, first of all, it proves that these foreign fights, these foreign super fights were happening way before now. Like, we're making like, oh, are we losing the super fights in America? Did we lose it 50 years ago? Because Ali fought in Africa and Ali fought in the Philippines, you know? So by the time you get to the Thriller Manila, it is the moment for Ali to cement himself, you know? And Frazier can mess that up, and then you would have sort of an era where, you know, who knows who's the best, right? You'd have these mix and matches, But in reality, you know, Ali gets the stoppage in a fight that he himself calls the closest he's ever been to death. You think about the first fight, broken jaw, you know, and the shots Ali took in the first fight is just insane. You know, when you look at what Frazier does with that left hook, the guys like Jimmy Ellis and I think even maybe Quarry, was it?
Quarry's bad, really bad.
You know, like he's got that whipping left hook, and you see Ali take several of them very cleanly and almost go down. You know, confused because he was hurt before he finally went down in the 15th round. He's hurt, you know.
I just saw a compilation that was all the left hooks landed by Frazier during that fight.
Yeah.
I'm not just like it was like as long as a round.
Yeah.
Left hook at the left hook at the left
hook. And each time Ali's like,
yeah,
you know, like,
rocked.
Hey, but he stands
I forgot
up.
how often he got rocked in that fight because the 15 rounders are funny. They're so long.
Yeah.
You get lost in the sauce.
And to get up in the 15th round, Ali, to get up from being knocked down, you're in the drag out in the mud 15-round kind of fight, and then you get dropped in the 15th round. Dude, a lot of guys aren't able to get up on that left hook in the round 15, man. It's just what a trilogy. I mean, we're not talking about the middle one because the middle one is never anywhere you can find it. You can never find this freaking fight. I've only seen highlights of the second one. Is it on YouTube?
It's the middle child of this trilogy.
No, but it's not fair because Frazier always says he used to say. I mean, now he's passed away. Obviously, rest in peace. Yeah, and he really should have won that fight and all that other stuff. I'm curious to see it in its entirety. And you know, what does everybody at home think of that second one?
So,
whoever has seen it.
So say Frazier's right. Say he should have won that fight. Does the third one ever happen then?
No.
Right.
It's a thing.
So timing, politics. So I'm going to bring something up that when you look at trilogies, yes, it's about the great fights, but also it's more than anything, it's about the dance partners. It's guys, they're together. Like even Ali and Frazier, the first time they fought, yeah, Ali wasn't at his best, but still made a great fight. Second fight, obviously a bit of a dud. You know, you can argue whatever.
Also in the first fight, you know what's amazing for why it's the fight? Because Ali comes back from that exile. He's still undefeated.
Right.
That's a couple wins in a row.
But he's not his prime.
No,
it's not prime Ali.
Not his prime.
But still makes a great fight.
But it's still Ali, though. I'm just saying, he still got it. He be performing after that, you know?
But we saw Ali not in his prime much later. Yeah. Like Larry Holmes, it's a sad thing to watch. But then the third fight, both guys are degraded. They're not. You could see the extra flesh around their midsections, but they still put on a classic. And that's what I mean about the dance partners. So it's not always just like we got the 2 best guys in the division fighting for the era. Not necessarily. We just got 2 guys who can't miss making a great fight.
Yeah, that third fight, you see a little bit of a back fat. I don't know when I started getting back fat. It was no good.
Get a little fleshy around the midsection.
Before we move on, one quick question, Chris. Did that third one happen at the best time? Because I've heard certain boxing experts say a prime Ali dances around Frazier. A prime Frazier, you'll get hit with that many left hooks, you're going to the hospital, it's over. Did they meet for that third one, degraded just enough to give us a great fight?
That was essentially my point, is that, like, I mean, we're not seeing the best versions of these guys fighting at their absolute primes, because at their primes, Ali probably does dance around him and win the fight. But like, if they're both degraded, and we've seen even on our air on ProBox, we got two guys that are like, well, they're both on their prime, they're both a little shop worn. They make for a great fight. Yeah, that was that third fight.
You know what? You guys, this is why I love working with you guys. I start thinking as I'm going, and then the show can last forever. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. When you talk about that third fight as well, okay, maybe not in their best and a little past their prime. Also, the willingness to be punished, to go through the punishment, the heat in the Philippines. It's a violent fight. I'm gonna tell you something. I always give the Easterners credit, like, oh, those are mentally the strongest fighters, you know. This is an era in the 70s where the Westerners were that mentally strong. I don't know too many Westerners that could be in that kind of fight today. You know what I mean? Like,
for that kind of money I'm willing to die in here.
Literally.
You know what I always think as the resident science guy? I always think about what their preparations were like back then. Like, they didn't have Gatorade. They weren't taking supplements.
They didn't have their nutritionists.
They're 220-pound monsters back then. Those are big men. And it's not like now, but guys are 280, whatever. For 15 rounds. Beating their heads in, and they're fast, they're strong, and they kept up throughout. You didn't see guys like fall off a cliff in 15 rounders. They just kept up, boom, 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 boom. I'm always amazed at that.
And principled men, you know, like, you know what? Nah, I'm not giving in. You're not giving in to me. I'm not giving in to you.
Unless you had that Foreman game changing. Like, Frazier's not going down unless you literally put him out. You got to put him out.
That does happen. Even Frazier still got up all those times. He still got up. He wasn't going away. It's that principled alpha male mentality, man. It was just more common even among our athletes.
But on top of that, with trilogies, and we're gonna get into a bunch of them, there's also the rivalry. So I was talking about dance partners. Yes, you have guys that have to line up a certain way, but you've got to have what you brought up, that integrity of like, I'm not letting this mother effer beat me tonight or ever. I'm gonna fight to the absolute death.
Call me an Uncle Tom, call me a sellout. Watch.
It
became personal. That hatred was in there.
It became personal.
And that was great. That's what made it.
And Frazier never left it.
Yeah.
He never let that go.
And let me tell you something else. Does the third one happen if Frazier gets a second? What about Ali fight Norton 3 times? I don't even know if that's on the list. Is that on the list?
It's not on the list. But
Ali and Norton fight. Dude, today, you get a guy who stylistically matches up that much clash with your style. You stay away. It's not like Foreman where Norton was a simple style for him. His style blended well. Yeah, Foreman with Norton. With Ali, it's like, dude, I just got away with one man. I'm going to get away from this guy. I don't want to see him. Got fought him 3 times. 3 times.
You know what reminds me of?
Got his jaw broken out. Are you kidding me?
Roy Jones and Antonio Tarver. You snuck by in the first one. Stay away from that guy.
You went back for boy Antonio? Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about this one. One I remember, Chris, I want to tell you a story that you will appreciate. We were both wrestlers. I was at a wrestling tournament. It was summertime. I forget, I was seeing the second or third fight between Bowe and Holyfield. Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe. It was before the second or third one. They made a big announcement. All right, guys, weigh-ins are done. We're going to try to get this tournament over so we can all get to see the fight. They announced it to all the wrestlers because it was crossover big, Chris. It was like traffic stopped. I remember going home from that wrestling tournament to watch a fight. Nobody was on the street, bro.
The heavyweight division had a major rivalry after the Tyson domination and the Holmes domination.
The 90s were so good.
All of a sudden, you have Holyfield taking the mantle, and then Bowe beats him in that first fight. You're like, yo, man, there's a major rivalry here in a mega fight.
Well, that's kind of where the idea came from in the heavyweights. It only takes one shot. Like, you know, if you're that guy, and that's why, like what you said before, guys that don't silently match up, you guys start to avoid each other. Because listen, anybody can win that title at any time. Here we saw that. Riddick Bowe, for me, he was like the evolution of the heavyweight division. He was the first like real, true, big, athletic heavyweight. We hadn't seen guys like that. Guys who could throw a ton of punches a fight, guys who were fast and long, who could box at the outside, fight on the inside, and do it for 12 or 15 rounds. You know, we didn't have those kinds of guys that were that big and athletic. And then Evander, he's just a freak of nature. He was so undersized and would take his chin was incredible. I was watching him and Burt Cooper earlier today. What a fight.
The mental side of it. He was like a man's man, the mental side of it.
But what's interesting to me, Paul, I want to ask you about this. One of the things that's interesting about this trilogy to me is Riddick did have a problem with his discipline, and he went up and down in weight throughout this trilogy. Holyfield looked like he's made of mahogany in every single fight.
Holyfield's more principled. You know, by the time you get to the 90s, you have the Western man is becoming a little bit too in love with his success. And Riddick is sort of that next generation of, you know, even Tyson to a degree did that, right? Where it's like, I got it good. You know, Holyfield stays with that old school parameters. Man's man. I stay in shape. I stay training no matter what. Money doesn't affect me. But it's sort of it's the generations clashing in a way. You know, even though they're 4 years apart in Olympic years.
To a degree with Holyfield, certainly disciplined man. You know, ethics. You're saying, you know, moral, whatever. But in terms of his style, he couldn't let off. He was so small. You know, he didn't have the one-punch Tyson power. He couldn't.
He still made all that money. He didn't want to let off.
That's a whole different
thing. He was
thing.
crazy. You got to be a little bit crazy. You know? Crazy. What is it? Crazy as a fox?
Crazy
what's
as
the
fox.
thing? He was crazy.
But I see what you're saying about there's certain fighters who can be undisciplined and knock you out.
Yeah,
Holyfield.
David Tua.
Not
David Tua never won a heavyweight title though, Chris.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know, at the highest level, the distances are this much different. I thought of randomly something because I randomly saw an Instagram post. It has to do with Riddick Bowe, maybe not the trilogy, but I gotta say this because this made me think a little bit. Because you're talking about, you know, damage taken and all this other stuff. Riddick Bowe in the Olympics got stopped by Lennox Lewis in the finals. I saw a post on a Soviet page on Instagram the other day. Actually, it might have been this morning or last night, actually. And it was showing this heavyweight named Miroshchenko. Miroshchenko, and it showed all his accolades, and it showed some highlights of Miroshchenko. And then it says, fought Riddick Bowe in the semifinals. I've seen the highlights of that semifinal fight, because I've seen the highlights of the '88 Olympics. Miroshchenko dropped Riddick Bowe in round 1, and then Riddick came back and beat him. And then Riddick makes the finals. Riddick makes the finals and loses to Lennox. I'm just saying. What if Bowe, there's nobody's doing head tests back then. You just go in there and fight. What if Riddick still has a concussion from that semifinal bout with Miroshchenko?
There's almost no chance he didn't.
So that Lennox Lewis fight, because you ever see the Lennox Lewis final against Riddick? It's awkward. It's like he hits him and it's like
he got touched and kind of went.
Kind of turns around and then all of a sudden the fight's over. You're like, what? Wait, what? What's going on? I wonder now. You know, because again, back then you just nuts. Now there's more safety measures. You know, Riddick may have taken a bad concussion in that semifinal fight, which he won against a very tough Soviet fighter. I saw this guy's accolades; they were crazy. By the way, he died mysteriously, as tends to happen over there in that part of the world later.
Oh, you lost it? You did.
Yeah. He died like a decade later.
I'm kidding.
Crazy. But nonetheless, I was thinking. Maybe that's could say something about the awkward final with Lennox, because the Lennox was final in the gold medal match with Riddick. It's weird because okay, it's a first round stoppage, but then when you watch it, you're like, such an awkward end. He gets hit, he gets hurt, and then it's like he's kind of up against the ropes.
It's also heavyweights because Riddick
but
could
I'm telling
go
you, he's still concussed from Miroshchenko.
I'm saying Riddick could have gone in there concussed and knocked out Lennox himself.
Of course,
they're both big athletic guys.
But the problem is you're also dealing with Lennox, who's one of the greatest. So you're a little bit concussed from the semifinal fight, and then you're dealing with Lennox in the final.
At the end of the day, though,
what a crazy.
At the end of the day, Lennox's discipline outshines whatever Riddick's athleticism and abilities, whatever.
It could have been, man.
Here's what we'll say about a lot of these trilogies, and I think Riddick Bowe, Evander Holyfield, these trilogies are often a fighter's prime. This was Riddick Bowe's. Riddick Bowe, this took his prime. Agree? Or not, Paul?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Never the same guy.
If you look at Riddick's career, what it's known for, it's known for this trilogy. You know, like obviously he's the undisputed heavyweight champion, also, which it came about from this trilogy, but there's other fights with Riddick. If you watch Riddick was an unbelievable fighter. Really, such a
in every way.
Versatile fighter. Didn't last long, and a lot of the reason is because of this trilogy.
Yeah, it's very, very true. Well, let's talk about one. I want to talk about probably the most entertaining trilogy of all time, Arturo Gatti, Irish Mickey Ward. No one who's seen it has forgotten it, any of the 3 fights. But what I will throw out here is one of the reasons a lot of these fights are on the list. It decided kind of that particular era, who was number 1. Is this fight partly so great because both guys weren't number 1. They weren't technical boxers. They weren't the greatest of their era. They had enough heart to go to war 3 times. Is that why we love it, Chris?
Yeah, it's a bit of an everyman story. Mickey Ward is a journeyman, literally a journeyman. Like and Arturo, former champion, but also seemed to be on his last leg. He was like the Phoenix. He kept rising, kept coming up. He won another world title later on, but he won the IBO and welterweight, right? He won the Gianluca Branca at 140.
140.
Yeah, a real 140 pounder. No, IBO is not that not as significant as the others. But I was at all 3 of these fights. Guys, all 3 of them.
Oh.
I was front row for the first one.
Yeah.
So randomly,
I was at
listen.
2 and 3, not the first
I was a
one.
huge Arturo Gatti fan. No one thought the first. No one, in the first one, you line up, like, oh, Arturo's got another comeback fight. He had just knocked out Teron Millette with a beautiful 1-1-2. Bang! He's with Buddy McGirt at the time. They're like, all right, Arturo could maybe be a world champion again at 140. So I made it weight again because De La Hoya crushed him at 47.
Killed him.
Did not belong at 47 ever. And then he moves back down to 40, gets in shape, knocks out Teron Millette, gets the Mickey Ward fight, and you're like, all right, this is another step towards a title. And then that fight happens. I remember my uncle worked at food and beverage at Mohegan Sun, where the fight was. Got us tickets. Got 2 tickets for you guys. You want to go? Of course we do. My brother and I drive up. We watch this fight. I remember being sick to my stomach at the end of the fight. That was so much violence.
Yeah.
Being in that room, it was so much violence. That 9th round was literally hard. I'm the biggest Arturo Gatti fan around. I know you are too. In the 9th round, I'm like, stop the fight. What are we looking at?
What about when he gets
What
up?
are we looking at?
When he gets up and he shakes his head like, no, they didn't stop it.
No, yeah.
What are you talking about?
No.
And Mickey Ward famously threw his hands up like, oh my God, it's over. Thank God I've won. And Arturo goes, no.
And if you knew Arturo, he had this
He was like Jason.
Cougine-esque. He had this Cougine-esque type of mentality. So you can see him shaking his head. But if you know
I love the duct tape on the gloves, by the way. Very, very classy move.
Connecticut.
If you know him, you know, like he's probably like, well, cuz, nah. It's not like that, you know, or that's what he's thinking anyway. You know?
After the 9th round, which you took that hellacious beating that in any other jurisdiction they would have stopped it, Buddy McGirt goes.
Frank Cappuccino, you know what?
No,
Frank Cappuccino too.
Let these guys die.
Frank might have been a little bit senile by then
Yeah.
too himself.
He also a fellow Cougine, like you said.
Yeah. He's like, I'm not stopping the Paisan.
Let the Italian kid keep going. So Buddy McGirt in the corner tells him, listen, champion, I'm going to stop the fight. And Arturo's telling him no, of course, like a real fighter, like a blood and guts warrior that he is. He goes, you can use your legs. Show me you can use your legs. And he made him get up off the stool before the round started. Yeah. And he said, show me you can move. And he just bounced in the corner just to move, show his legs.
That's crazy.
And then he went out there and boxed beautifully in the 10th round.
Yeah.
He won that round.
Mind you, there's a bunch of Arturo Gatti stories in the corner like this. Like the Wilson Rodriguez where he's got to peek because he can't see out of one eye.
They tap him in the leg. How many fingers?
And the doc keeps asking how many
you're
fingers.
giving away the trick? They tapped you, by the way.
That was Joe Souza was the cut man back then. Joe Souza was crazy. He said he loved big cuts.
Yeah.
He's like, I love big cuts. He was like,
He was a good cut man.
Yeah, he was a really good cut man. Rest in peace. But yeah, apparently in that corner, he's like, his eyes were super shut, and he was asking him how many fingers hold up. Pat him on. I always joke, like, because I've been blinded in fights before. Always say 2. They never hold up one finger.
Yeah.
they never hold up one finger. Always say 2. If you can't see or see, say 2.
Hit the one in the middle.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But the thing about this, and it's so many of these trilogies, guys, when we're returning to the themes, some of us as adults being done with combat sports, and some of our friends aren't in good shape, and a lot of our friends can't button their coats in MMA because all their knuckles are gnawed up. You guys know people in boxing and can't make a sentence.
Walking on their heels.
Some of these are hard to watch, right? Yeah. Some of these great that we loved as kids, like, oh, that was a great trilogy. As adults in our 40s, like you said, it's hard to watch round 9 now.
I can't watch Tim Bradley and Ruslan Boronikov. Can't watch that fight because I know Tim now.
That we know Tim.
I didn't know Tim when that fight happened. I was like, man.
Also, you've been in with Ruslan and you know.
And I know how hard he hits. True. Yeah, because knowing Tim, like I always hate watching my friends fight, but yeah, once you realize that you're watching violence and people being maimed, it takes on a different effect.
That's the thing about these
and
trilogies.
Mickey, we're talking about Arturo. Mickey too. Mickey, if you know Mickey now, Mickey, there's a point in his eyesight where he doesn't have vision. Yeah. I've had a team when he looks up or something. There's something. His eyes are permanently altered.
He's dealing with CTE issues.
I had that for 2 months after Ruslan. I couldn't. If I put my head down and looked up, I'd lost. I lost 30% of my
Mickey
vision.
was in a lot of rough fights too.
That's what he did.
This was
the
for
eardrums.
This was for the most exciting fighter of the era type of reward instead of the fighter of the era. This was for the most exciting fighter of the era. These guys, it was like the elephant in the room with these guys. They were always in exciting fights, but they never came up against each other.
I think Zab said at one point Mickey was the hardest fight he had up until
yeah.
Cotto.
Well, yeah, Zab, that's another thing. I mean, Mickey, people say, oh, Mickey had this many losses. Dude, most guys have a management that actually understands how to move them. Mickey just got thrown into everybody. I look back now. Where do you get your balls big enough? If you got Mickey Ward, to put him in with Zab Judah, you know what I mean? Like on the rise, Zab Judah. Like you got Mickey, who's a contender in and around that era, where he sort of makes good fights and he can kind of slide into a title fight.
Too, man.
Where do you get your? Where do you get him big enough to put him on a Friday Night Fights main event against this up and coming megastar Zab Judah, who can dance circles around him? And Zab's told me. Zab boxed him easily and won every round. And the last round, Mickey got him with that body shot. He's like, bro, I've never been so hurt to the body. He goes, to this day.
He wanted the fight to be over.
Yeah. One of the things, Mickey finally got to him at the end. But what I'm saying is, this is why Mickey had these kind of losses. You don't have to take the Zab Judah fight at that point in Mickey's career. Zab needs a bigger name. He's on the come up. You know, he needs to start getting these kind of names on his resume. You don't need to fight Zab at that moment. But again, when this guy fought everybody, probably had management that was just tossing him in there, just throwing the grenade.
It's his mom, right? Just
taking money on taking money on the side that Mickey never saw.
Yeah. So you know, it's a shame in that way because I sometimes see comments like, "Oh, Mickey had this many losses." Yeah, he also wasn't taken care of at all. You know, and still managed to make it happen. You know, what about the tough cuts, the loss on cuts against Jesse James Leha, against Vince Phillips, the IBF world title, mind you. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Then he goes all the way to England, a hard luck fight.
That was the only time he ever got stopped. It was a cut.
Yeah. Oh, the cuts were what it was. What about the Shane Erie, who was, you know, a WBU title at that time was never one of the major titles, but it was more popular. It was sort of like the IBO today. It was a little bit more popular even as a secondary belt. Goes over to Liverpool and fights Shane Erie, who was like this really, really popular guy over there. Again, WBU was very popular.
Wasn't he like the Irish Arturo Gatti? Something like that. That was the nickname.
He was from Liverpool, but what I'm saying is the WBU title was sort of a feeder into the main titles back then. Because if you remember, Ricky Hatton ended up having the WBU title later before he beat Couch for a major title. So Shea was in that WBU title run. Mickey goes over there and stops him. You know what I mean? In a great fight. That's another great violent fight because Shea had this reputation as well. You know, and
how about the Emmanuel Augustus fight where you get two guys who are like the same kind of guy?
Because
he was like a 500 fighter, but he fought everybody.
Again, another guy, nobody ever took care of him. No, Styles? What Styles? Throw him in. You know what I mean? It's mind-boggling when you think of the way some of these guys' careers go, and then you think of the opposite, where you got guys who make entire careers and become like phenoms fighting cab drivers. It's mind-boggling when you see sometimes this way, sometimes this way. And then you get the random idiot. You got all these losses. I know, moron, I know. Look at the record. Strength of schedule matters.
The numbers. That's
Strength of schedule matters.
One more thing about Arturo and Ward. So if you, we were talking about it with the Ali and Frazier. Yeah, they weren't absolutely prime. You had mentioned these aren't the two guys that are going to be vying for titles kind of matchup. But also, if you look at their skill sets and actually the fights themselves, if Arturo doesn't break his hands in 2 and 3, their fights are easy. The second fight was actually pretty easy. Arturo won that fight pretty handily. Third one, Arturo, if you watch the first 3 rounds before he breaks his right hand, is completely tuning Mickey up. Beautiful boxing, knows how to deal with the style, knows how to stay away from that left hook to the liver. Then he breaks his hand on the hip. Whole fight breaks out. Gets dropped a few rounds later. Blood and guts war once again. Arturo saves his hands in that third fight. He might even stop.
But Arturo didn't know how to fight that way.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to fight that way.
And I love how, when Mickey Ward was asked about it, he goes, and I had him hurt, and my body just couldn't get there. I couldn't finish him like I could. In previous fights, I would finish guys. I didn't have it anymore. And that's how he walked away. But he did make, Paulie, to your point, the payday at the end of his career that he richly deserved. Well, let's move on to one where how can I put it? The loss of the boxing community recently, Israel Vasquez losing his battle to cancer. First off, everybody here at ProBox TV, to his friends, his family, we're with you. We lost a major pillar of the boxing community in Israel Vasquez, a guy that I never heard a bad word about in the fight community. Excellent commentator, excellent guy. We feel for his family, but he left a great legacy. In this trilogy, it was actually a quadrilogy. We talked about the first 3 fights, Israel Vasquez versus Rafael Marquez. Guys, when you talk about, little guys can't hit, little guys can't punch. Gentlemen.
Look at the records of these guys.
This should have thrown that completely out of the window.
I think they had to combine almost 60 KOs. It's ridiculous.
And the KO percentage was astronomical. Both these guys almost all KO wins.
But, Paulie, I love the way you talk about criticism from people. Israel Vasquez in the first fight gets his nose not broken, flattened. Can't breathe out of his nose in round 7.
Face is different the rest of his life.
Face is different the rest of his life.
I remember people were criticizing him.
People were saying he's a coward. Let's see you fight the rest of the fight not being able to breathe through your nose. What do you think about the way he came back and won the next 2 fights? By the way, very close fights. That's guts and heart.
Very close fights, but also you can see how it probably bothered him to be mentioned among like guys who quit and guys like me. The Mexican fighters take this very, very seriously.
Very seriously.
That reputation. They have a reputation as a fighter, but when you're a Mexican fighter, there's a little bit more to hold just of a standard when it comes to balls. You know what I mean? There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You could be a great fighter, and if you don't measure up. If your balls don't weigh enough, that's it. You're not in the circle of trust for the Mexican fans.
You can lose with honor.
Yeah.
To Mexican fans, you can lose with honor. And you can also win without honor to them. So, I respect that part of the warrior spirit.
And that's why Vasquez comes back and he's like, yo, he took that seriously. He took that personally, bro.
He stopped Marquez in the
rematch. He didn't take it personally, Rafael, because these two guys loved each other as far as, a lot of respect for one another. This wasn't one of those bitter rivalries. This was just a very competitive rivalry. But you can see, if you're in real time, I can remember Israel getting criticized by media and fans and message boards and all that stuff back then, and thinking to myself, man, and I'm a young pro myself at the time, so I'm like, did he quit? Did he? I don't know. He broke his nose. You haven't been through all the injuries you end up going through later in your career. You don't know how to take it. But dude, obviously it bothered him a lot, bro, because he goes 2 and 3 are phenomenal fights, and he is not wilting at all. And again, when you think about the punching power, Rafael Marquez, crazy power. Israel Vasquez, crazy power. The violence stayed with these two guys for our entertainment, for our love of the sport. It's guys like this that make us love the sport. When we talk about boxing fans and we say, why do you love the sport? What is it with this sport? It's fights like this, guys like this, that make you love the sport, and also make it misunderstood, because people think, boxing, combat sports, violent. You make violent people. No, these two were some of the nicest guys you'll meet.
Most generous people.
Yeah,
I met Marquez. I never met Vasquez.
Don't get me wrong. You got some loose cannons in boxing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you, it doesn't. But then
you got some loose screws in every one of our heads.
And you got loose cannons in all life in general. That's just life. But a lot of these guys, think about the violence that is exuded in this rivalry, and yet two of the nicest guys, man. And that's another big reason why it's such a big loss here.
This one, and we'll talk about another amazing Mexican trilogy in a moment. But Chris, do you see this also as a little bit of a transition in this era? When I was a kid, right, when you thought about Mexican fighters, you thought about take 3 to give 1. Just balls, as you always say. We're getting into an era of boxer punchers. These guys could box. These guys were intelligent. These guys had good defense. They could parry punches. So kind of this era, too, the skills in these, when you look at these trilogies, they went, they went to war, they killed each other. The skills these guys had, almost Mexican fighters got elevated by these trilogies.
Well, I think that it was kind of a misnomer in terms of like Mexican style. And if people kind of think of Mexican style as just a brawler comes forward and will take 3 to give 1. That was never the case. They were always technically, not necessarily technically superior, but had fantastic fundamentals, but they were just willing to put their nose on the line. When to take a shot to give a shot.
Exactly. Yep. That's what they don't lose. Mexican, what makes them good, obviously, ballsy fighters. They come forward and aggressive. But positioning, the battle of position is always important in boxing. And for me, it's one of the most important things. And it's not it's a very subtle thing to understand. Mexican fighters, the reason they are exciting and the reason they are effective is their sense of positioning. A lot like Eastern fighters, except the Mexican fighters are even more offensive-minded. The Eastern fighters, a lot of times, will try to be a little more technical defensively. These guys are a little bit more aggressive. They'll throw out a little bit of that defensive awareness. Not because they are bad defensively. It's like you said, they know which shots to take. They'll understand, okay, I'll take 3 to get 1. You make those 3 count, I'll understand, then you may back me up. You better make all 3 count. There's no throwaway punches. There's no throwaway punches. You're going to make me lose position.
The difference between the Mexican fighters and Eastern fighters are 2 things. So the Eastern fighters, they won't give ground, they won't back up because that's the way they were taught, and they're disciplined. The Mexican fighters won't give ground because they got balls, and they're gonna hear it from their whole village. They're gonna hear from their coach. They're gonna hear from their whole town.
That's a good point.
They're fighting more off of their heart and their cojones, where the Eastern fighters they're more calculated, robotic, much more calculated.
You don't do
this. You don't give up ground because it's not good for your
it's not good for your
ability to win.
Yeah.
Mexican fighters, I don't give ground because my heart and soul won't not allow me to do it, and that's why you get these kind of guys. And not to make it somber again. These guys are never the same after this fight. Both of them.
Right.
Both of them. Juanma Lopez knocks out Marquez after the 4th one in their fight. That almost creates another. That was a Puerto Rican-Mexican matchup. But Juanma then goes on a run, and he was on a run. He was a fantastic fighter as well. But neither one of these guys are the same after this fight. I forgot who said it, but when you fight, you leave a piece of yourself in the ring. These guys left a lot of themselves in the ring that night.
Well, speaking of that,
those nights.
Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric El Terrible Morales. I see you right now, Chris, going.
Best of all time.
Now, this is your number 1.
My number 1. Hands down. This is high-level Gatti Ward to me.
Yes.
Because Gatti Ward, they're sub-championship level fighters. Yes, Otero was a 2-time world champion, but at the time when they fought, it was not the prime of Gatti. The 130-pound Gatti was incredible. I mean, he could box, he could punch, he had it all. When they fought, Gatti Ward, they were both not their best, and Ward was never a champion, so they were not. This was 2 high-level, world-class, championship-level guys who would not give an inch. They were kicking and punching each other at press conferences.
Yeah.
They could not get, and they couldn't, there was no time they could be in the same room where they weren't trying to rip each other's heads off. And I mean, on top of the skills and the high level, they both had the animosity. They both had that Mexican spirit, that warrior spirit. I mean, look at these photos. Look at their faces. They are literally entrenched in battle at every moment of these fights. Absolutely, my hands down, my three favorite.
I've heard they don't like each other now. That they
can't
be in the same room now.
They did a podcast. Yeah. They had a podcast together for a while. Did they? Yeah, they were.
Wow. I've heard there's still tension out. That's just what I've heard.
I mean, I'm sure
they're very different people.
But I've heard they get along a little better. And I've been around Eric a little bit more. I was at the WC convention with him. The guy's one of the funniest dudes. Dude, the guy's so sarcastic. He's always cracking jokes. Then if your Spanish is no good, he's even more. Because then you're gonna be the butt of the jokes without realizing it. So if you're gonna be around Eric, you gotta make sure you understand Spanish. You'll be the butt of his jokes.
But this trilogy set the bar for how great these guys could be.
It really did, and also, we talk about the sporting side of Rafael Marquez and Israel Vasquez. This was the opposite. These two guys wouldn't drag it in the mud. They couldn't stand each other. As a matter of fact, you talk about the kicking and punching at the press conferences. I can't even tell you.
Eric threw the kick?
Yeah. No, and the Barrera with the combination, we just let his hands go. But Robert Diaz, who was working with matchmaker Robert Diaz, one of the better matchmakers in the sport today, who was working with Barrera at the time, has told me the story of that press conference. I can't tell you because YouTube is so sensitive, and if I say what they were arguing about, we might get blackballed on YouTube. So blame YouTube for me not being able to tell you what the exchange was. But basically, Eric said to Marco, you won't call me that again now that we're face to face. No, Marco said that to Eric. Marco said that to Eric. He goes, you won't call me that again now we're face to face. And sure enough, Eric did call him that, and right away, Marco cracked him.
Stole on him.
So that was what the great thing about this rivalry was. But you can have a rivalry where guys can't stand each other, and you can have a rivalry where guys are super respectful. Rafael Marquez and Israel Vasquez, super respectful, amazing rivalry. Morales and Barrera, bad blood all throughout. Great rivalry. You know what? I'm going to mention one that, speaking of bitter blood rivalries, that's not going to be on this list again. Please. Pazienza Haugen.
Greg Haugen.
Those guys.
Didn't he pass?
They hate each other. Bro. Let me tell you something.
They might have fought in the streets after the fight.
No, I'm telling you. My buddy Tommy, he's in on a lot of these message boards. He's an ex-pro fighter. Bro, Tommy tells me, he's in on more of these things more than us. He's in there, Bro, he tells me they still argue on Facebook. They still argue. Like a couple of years ago, I still remember him telling me they had an argument on Facebook. I'll kick your ass. I'll still kick your ass.
They'll be in retirement home trying to get fights.
Pazienza and Haugen still hate each other. The rivalry wasn't enough.
But this is one of the great things is it was here personally. But to your point, Chris, it was here tactically. It was here in balls. It was here. It on every level. This one satisfied.
And again, that's why it's my number one. It's my number one trilogy of all time. I remember going through. I was in high school at this time. I'm a little younger than you, Paul. I remember being literally on my friend's in his room sitting on the carpet like Indian style, like enthralled and watching this, and then going out and talking to his dad about the fight afterwards. But when we talk about we talked about Vasquez and Marquez. Or Marquez and Vasquez, however you want to put it, and how much they left in the ring. These guys are the opposite. This launched their career. They both went on to fight
but they already had
a decade.
And that's another thing too. When you talk about the high level of Gatti and Ward, these two guys already had a big reputation.
Yes.
Morales had won world championship against Daniel Zaragoza. He knocked out Junior Jones.
And Junior Jones, who had beaten Barrera twice,
had lost to Junior Jones and had come back and beaten the Prince. So he made his comeback. So it was these two guys were kind of made already as far as championship level fighters. Bonafide.
But after that, they were like walking around legends.
And then they put them together. You were like, oh my goodness, this fight's gonna happen, And then sure did. 3 times, sure did.
Well, speaking of a fighting 3 times, why not a quadrology with we try to be a bit neutral here, but we love our boy Juan Manuel Marquez. His 4 fights versus Manny Pacquiao. Anytime it starts out with him getting knocked down 3 times in round number 1 and getting a draw in the first fight, there were people, the commentators going, oh, this should be stopped. This is over. And Marquez came back and got a draw. Absolutely unbelievable. That was the start, gentlemen, of this rivalry. They fought 4 times. You know how the 4th one ended with Juan Manuel Marquez getting one of the most, and please, get on YouTube and watch it, I think one of the most intelligent knockouts of all time. The timing on that right hand, he had studied, he had practiced, and he got Pacquiao coming in. Face down, it was over. Gentlemen, how do you like this rivalry?
Exclamation point to a crazy rivalry. Exclamation point to a crazy rivalry because Marquez had not been able to get the nod up to that point. You know what I mean? So to get the nod there, I'm not going to get the nod in these close ones. I'm going to give myself the nod with that shot. So exclamation point to one of the greatest rivalries in the history of the sport that will live in infamy and famously. There's fights, and I think of 3 fights personally that I saw in my life where I see crazy first-round knockdowns where guys are hurt, and I'm telling myself as the fight's going on, like, oh man, this would have been such a great fight, and now it's gonna end in round 1 because somebody got caught. It happens sometimes, and sometimes the fight does end, and then you never get that rivalry because a first-round knockout is such a blowout, you never see them fight again. And you're left thinking, man, this would have been such a good fight. 3 different fights I saw this in. This was one of them. Marquez, Pacquiao won. He goes down 3 times, and I'm like...
He somersaulted at one point. Remember that?
Yeah. I was like, this was going to be such an awesome fight, and now it's over, and you're not going to get a rematch because it's the first-round knockout. And he manages to get out of it, and luckily he got out of it because just as I was saying to myself, this would have been a great fight and ended up becoming a monster rivalry.
And they never would have fought again after that.
The second one, actually was before this one, was Trinidad and Vargas. Trinidad and Vargas is hurt, and I'm like, oh man, this would have been such an amazing fight. Now this thing's gonna end in round 1. This freaking guy had to go catch him like that in round 1, and now Vargas gets out of it. There is no rematch or trilogy there, but you still have one of the most amazing fights you ever seen. And the third one was a little bit later on. I'm working at Showtime. And this one did end. It was Peter Quillen and Danny Jacobs. For me, it was personal because I knew both guys. It was a New York rivalry. It was for a middleweight championship. It was a big deal.
I fought an undercard of
that. Yeah. It was a big deal. And Danny hurts Peter, and I'm saying the same thing. Oh man, this would have been such a great fight. But that one did end. Yeah. And just as I say, we never got that one again.
But when you look at this fight and once again, I don't have to tell you about the physical abilities of Manny Pacquiao. You were in the ring with the guy. But this idea of the physical ability versus the timing, the IQ, the strength. Gentlemen, we work with Juan Manuel Marquez. He looks amazing now. Yeah. He is done. Yeah. He look a physical specimen, but the fight IQ also, the coaching of Nacho Beristain at the end of round 1 going, all right, that's as bad as it's going to get. Yeah. Win the next round. And then he wins the next round. He goes, okay, see that? That's one in the bank. Just that constant voice of Nacho Beristain going, right, one more round. See, champ, we're coming back. Him kind of mentally backing Juan Manuel Marquez. I think his coaching is underrated in that fight. Chris, what do you think?
I don't know if anyone underrates Nacho Beristain in terms of his coaching, but yes, absolutely in that fight specifically. But let's put this into context, into perspective rather. We just talked about Eric Morales and Barrera Morales, right? Pacquiao beat both of them. Marquez beat Barrera.
Yep.
You know, so now we're elevating the level once again. Now we got these guys, and guys who go on to fight for very long and multiple different weight classes after they fight each other. After they have even this quadrilogy, as we call it, has fought multiple weight classes along the way. I mean, the last fight was what, 47? Yeah. They went started at 30 and then going up to 47. I remember watching all of these in real time as well, and even in that 4th fight, Marquez was on the verge of getting stopped. Yep. His nose was destroyed. I mean, bleeding, was getting hit with everything. Yeah. He had dropped Pacquiao with a nice overhand right, caught him going backwards, and then the finish, like you said.
But it was actually a little bit less competitive, right? I mean, I felt like Pacquiao had...
really control. Other than the knockdown, he was in complete control.
Yeah, I felt like Pacquiao had more control of that fight than he had in the previous fights where he won. So I was like, oh,
because
man,
Marquez was never a real 47-pounder. You know, he had a couple big fights at 47.
But
he fought Tim, he fought Floyd,
timing, again,
we
talk about Mexican bulls holding your ground. That knockout is the epitome of what I'm talking about, Mexican bulls, holding your ground.
Oh, no, that was literally... We're gunfighting.
And I've spoken to... We have Juan here. He works with us. So I've spoken to Juan about that knockout, and what he told me, he said he had watched it in camp. He had watched the video. There was a thing where Pacquiao gave this little like double, triple feint or flinch, like, bah, 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 and then he closed the gap. And he said, we had worked on it. I knew it. He goes, if you look at me in camp, there's a video of me catching one of my sparring partners with a right hand and dropping him where he's giving me that same look. He goes, I actually remember. He goes, when I saw him do it, I was basically like, come to Papa. He goes, some to that effect. I remember Juan telling me, like, I saw him doing it. I was set to punch. I was like, bring it to me, baby. You know what I mean? Like, he knew, you see in the gates of heaven part when he's seeing these double, triple feint, and he just lets go. He goes, I let go of the hardest shot I could let go of. I knew I was going to catch him. And, well, you saw the result. The hardest shot was sleep time.
I fought Pacquiao after Marquez knocked him out. Yeah. And I remember watching that fight over and over and over again. Yeah, and Pacquiao has this little stutter, and sometimes he doubles it. That time he tripled it. Yeah. He did one too many, and it gave Marquez just enough time to pull it. But I remember, if you watch actually when I fought Pacquiao, I did that a million times. I just don't hit as hard as Marquez. so I was able to time him and get my head offline and let him with that shot, but like I don't hit like Marquez.
Because he's short, so he's got to get a little closer before he releases that left hand. Because it was usually a double, triple stutter feint, and he'd shoot a left hand.
And he's so explosive on his
stomach
feet.
or to your head. but because he's so short, he's got to get a little closer than the average guy before he can let go of the left hand, because the left hand comes from the back, you know. So you got to throw it all the way up front.
Historically, though, if you look at Pacquiao, he had more trouble with guys who were shorter than guys that were taller. He fought taller fighters very, very well. He just had between the explosiveness, his ability to judge distance, whatever. It was the shorter guys.
Morales gave him trouble in the first one, though.
Morales is not that tall, though.
Morales did, yeah.
Yeah, but he was actually, I think, in terms of technical ability, Morales probably gave him the most trouble in that first fight, the one he beat him.
I remember Bowe crying in the ring after
he can be beat.
Hey, a little shout out to Juan Manuel Marquez, our compadre here at ProBox TV. I was in the gym. He was getting ready to fight a guy named Rocky Juarez. Remember that fight?
Yeah.
He was backing up dudes. I am a nice, solid 190 pounds. He was backing up guys my size. Guys sparring him didn't want to get anywhere near Marquez. He had that kind of
Because his sense of position, he just beats you up, too. You know, because he can follow up and follow. When your sense of positioning is so good and your balance is good, you can assault and then keep following up if your conditioning allows you to, because you're always in position.
Not breaking position. And also, if you remember Marquez, he got dropped a lot early in fights, or when he's in the lighter weight classes, because he was holding position. And he was willing. He'd hurt his nose a lot. He was willing to stay in the pocket, which is why he was able to knock Pacquiao out. Even at an advanced stage. How old was he when he fought Pacquiao that last time?
They're older.
Yeah, they were 39, 30. I mean, he must have been probably, late 30s at that point. So for him to still have that desire to take it on the chin and to give you one, man, that's next level.
Well, we want to give a shout out to all the fighters. Once again, the family of Israel Vasquez, our thoughts are with you. All of these fighters, as we said, left a piece of themselves in the ring. And we, as fans, will always appreciate it. That's their Christmas gift to us. Don't forget it. We'll see you again here on ProBox TV.
Zio Graziano, we forgot that one.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.
Wait. Honorable mention. Zale versus Graziano for the old heads.
Whoa. If we're doing honorable mentions, Michael Carbajal, Chiquito Gonzalez, come on, guys.
All right, okay.
We
we can only have so much time on the show. Let us know in the comment section on YouTube which ones we missed. We'll talk about them next time. Everybody, enjoy your Christmas and New Year.